Our ore was brought from mines on the west side of the rails, the Collar Mine, the Savage Mine, the Potosi Mine, and the Hale and Norcross Mine, over to that crusher mill on the east side. Now, folks, as we go underneath this trestle, I'd like you to take a look at those large rocks laying on the ground underneath it. Those large rocks laying there are actual gold and silver ore that has laid on the ground a century and a half. Now, the reason these rocks are on the ground is when they brought the ore across to this trestle, if the rock was too big to go through that crusher machinery, well, they just pushed that rock right off the top of the trestle. So if any of you folks are feeling a little bit lucky today, come on back later with a great big hammer. You can go to work on one of those rocks and you might just strike your fortune. A little bit luckier than one of those slot machines. Now, when mining began on the Comstock Lode around 1860, the only way to get the ore down to the mills on the Carson River was by wagon and mule. It was very expensive, and it took over a week for a wagon or more to make it down the mountains. In 1869, a man named William Sharon on the board of directors of the Bank of California thought it would be profitable for that bank to build a railroad between Carson City and Virginia City. Construction began in February 1869 with 1,500 workers employed to build the line. Coming the 21 miles from Carson City to Virginia City, 7 tunnels were done through the Washoe Mountains, and the railroad comes up nearly 1,800 feet in altitude, making us one of America's true mountain railroads. Now, coming through those canyons, the railroad makes enough twists, turns, complete circles before arriving here in town, and all those twists and turns, well, that gave us the nickname of the crookedest railroad in the world. Each time, more than $3.7 million was invested in stock in the Ward Bullion shaft. And as soon as all that money cleared the San Francisco Stock Exchange and ended up as cash in their pockets,
doesn't touch the
those two fellows just smiled and declared this shaft a bust and closed it. But don't feel too bad now for all those people who lost all their money investing in it. They all did get something. They all got the shaft. Morning hours, you often see a lot of the wildlife around here. We do have those herds of wild mustangs, and of course we're very proud of them. We also have a lot of coyote, mule deer, black-tailed deer, jackrabbits, cottontails. We've got the cutest.
That's the road we took to get in here.
In Sierra Nevadas. We've got the red-tailed hawk, the California quail, and we have the bad boys of the desert as well, the great basin rattlesnake, some mountain lion, and some bobcat. You might notice there are no lumber-producing trees up here in the Washoe Mountains. Well, folks, we are in an area called high desert at over 6,200 feet in altitude. There's very little water up here to support that type of growth. All the lumber for the mines, mills, homes, and businesses came from the beautiful Sierra Nevada Mountains, and most all of that lumber was brought here by the Virginia Truckee Railroad. Those miners that worked on the Comstock Lode were a pretty tough bunch. They had a nickname at that time. They were called muckers, and that was a name of respect for them. They would work in those mines 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, in temperatures around 120 degrees at the lower levels. Now, at those temperatures, they could only work about 15 minutes at a time. Then they would have to proceed upward in the main shaft and off the side in what was called a drift. Now, at the end of that drift, they kept ice and cold water. They cool down a bit, then go back to work for about 15 minutes more. During that period of time, miners around the world made about 80 cents a day for their labor. Miners on the Comstock Lode were in such high demand, they became the highest paid miners in the world at $4 a day. Now folks, that's the equivalent of $54 an hour now. And at the end of their shift, they could go to Virginia City, they could order a 2-inch thick steak weighing about 2 pounds and a great big plate of beans. And folks, that meal would cost them about 40 cents. Now coming around the next curve, we're going to be looking down into Gold Canyon over the town of Gold Hill. Coming into view down in the canyon, the large steel roof building you will see down there at one time was the Crown Point Mill. Now the functions of the mills on the Comstock was to crush that old rock into near dust. That dust would then be taken down to the processing plants on the Carson River, where the gold and silver would be extracted by the mercury or cyanide recovery process. Coming into view down in the canyon, you'll see the Gold Hill Hotel and Saloon. Now folks, this is the oldest continually operating hotel in Nevada. It opened in 1859 as a tent saloon. The stone hotel portion that you'll see up front, that was added 2 years later in 1861. Now folks, it's still in business today, just as it was in 1859. They do serve a marvelous lunch and dinner if you're interested. The original owners of that hotel are still dead. The brickfront building with the 3 steel doors on the front of it at one time was the Bank of California. Now this area of Gold Hill was known as the Maynard Block, one of the cash and stock exchange areas along the Comstock Lode. There were days when up to $1 million would exchange hands in cash and mining stock right on that very street. Now coming around the curve to the grade crossing off the east side, you'll see the monument to the Liberty Volunteer Fire Company. Now folks, these were the brave volunteer firefighters that protected Gold Hill from fires in the mines and the desert. Now this monument is located right where the original fire hall once stood, just next to the railroad tracks. The original fire hall, well, it burned up in a fire. Crossing is the 1869 station, the City Truckee Railroad built for the town of Gold Hill. The B&T Railroad owned and operated this railroad station from 1869 until this line to Virginia City was abandoned in 1938. At that time, the railroad sold the station and all the property around it to Story County, Nevada, for the sum of $1. Now folks, coming up to the rear of the train off the west side, to our rear and a little bit behind us, you will see the remains of the North Yellow Jacket shaft. Now a little bit about how it all worked, folks. That large tower you see up on the hill was called the head frame. That's what was used to hoist the oil from the depths in large steel buckets. That oil would then be dumped down those 2 steep wooden chutes into what's called the ore bin at the bottom. Once this ore bin was sufficiently full, as we pass it, you'll see 3 doors on the front that would be open. That oil would then be dumped into railroad cars to be taken for crushing and processing. Now folks, as the train does pull to a stop here, something a little interesting off the east side. If you look right over the bluff, you'll see the main head frame of the Yellow Jacket mining complex. Notice those huge wooden timbers have been plastered with concrete. Folks, that was done in an effort to help prevent that head frame from burning in the event of a fire. Folks, you might remember before we came through the tunnel and on the other side of that mountain, I did point out to you over there the East Yellow Jacket Shaft. Well, right here above us off the west side, up on that rise, the North Yellow Jacket Shaft. And just over the bluff, the main shaft of the Yellow Jacket Mining Complex. Well, folks, all three of these mine shafts are connected together underground by over 47 miles of tunnels. Folks, at this point, I'm going to be moving back up to the loading platform between the cars. On our way back to Virginia City, I do have a little bit more to show you and some things to tell you about. But if anyone has any questions at all about the Virginia and Truckee Railroad, the Comstock load, or any of my ex-wives, please, folks, do feel free to ask. I will do the best I can to answer any questions for you. And folks, I really do hope you're enjoying your trip with me this morning. All right, if you'll pardon me, folks, I'm going to slide by the... Interesting part of the story is the United States government has never given up the land the fort sat on. They never built on it or sold it, folks. They just put a great big fence all the way around it. Personally, I think the government keeps aliens up there now. I think that's Area 52.
Makes you wonder.
Now we get a little bit of heat and a little bit of smoke just the way it was in 1870. This is called living history. Okay, go ahead and breathe again. And when those miners first came to Comstock Road, the only thing they knew that was here to dig for was gold. While they were digging for that gold, they kept running into a problem. It was something they called the infernal blue muck. It was a blue-gray, clay-type substance. It stuck to their picks and their shovels, it fouled their sluice boxes, and it gave them nothing but trouble. And the deeper they dug, the worse it got. They began to accumulate huge piles of that blue muck next to their mining claims. So much so, they started to haul it by the wagon load to the brand new town of Virginia City and throw it on the streets. Now they did that because that blue muck dried so hard and packed so well, it made excellent tracking for the wagons and mules, especially during those winter months. But folks, about 2 years went by. In late 1862, someone finally assayed that infernal blue muck. Well, folks, it came back at nearly $3,000 per ton in silver. So the rush to the Comstock was on. People from all over the globe started coming to the richest gold and silver strike in world history. And folks, that legend that you might have heard, well folks, that legend is actually true. That at one point in time, the streets of Virginia City, Nevada, had been paved with silver. Now still to this day, there is over 750 miles of mine shafts and tunnels, going down 3,000 feet deep and even deeper than that up here along the Comstock Road, where the Virginia and Truckee Railroad began hauling all that rich gold and silver ore way back in 1870. Well, folks, that made us the richest railroad in the world. We were able to pay our stockholders dividends as high as $100,000 a month. Just in a short line railroad. east side of the train is our restoration and repair shop. This is where we worked so hard to keep these beautiful antique locomotives and cars running and in good condition. Now, folks, our shops are located at the same location the original B&T shops were built way back in 1869. If you look just above our rails, right above us, is the Collar Mine Tour. Now, folks, that is an outstanding tour. I really do recommend it if you do have the time. They do take you down into the original 1861 Collar Mine. They show you how hard rock mining was done here on the Comstock Lode over 160 years ago. Folks, they even give you a little sample of total darkness. And the best part of the tour of the Collar Mine, they bring you back out. Collar Mine's located just down the street from our station. They do have parking available. In 1860, there was a little ink spot on the map, a place called Desert Wells. Desert Wells was a Pony Express stop. For the brief time the Pony Express ran, it became a stagecoach stop after that. Nothing more than 2 wells, 2 stables, a 4-room stone hotel, and of course, a saloon. In 1862, a young man came to Desert Wells. He stayed there about 3 weeks before moving up to Virginia City. His name was Samuel Langhorne Clemens. When he arrived in Virginia City, he got a job at the newspaper in town, the Territorial Enterprise, and for the years he lived in our town, he wrote a lot of stories and articles for that newspaper. And while he lived in Virginia City, he also changed his name to that which we know him as today, Mark Twain. Now, Mark Twain went on to become one of the greatest authors in all of American history, writing wonderful books and stories that are as wonderful to read today as they were when he wrote them over 100 years ago. And folks, Mark Twain began his writing career right here in Virginia City. Well, folks, we're approaching the Virginia City Station. I'd really like to take this opportunity to thank you folks very much for riding with me this morning. While you're here in Virginia City, please do take advantage of some of the shops and museums. I know you'll enjoy them. And wherever your travels do take you, folks, please do drive carefully. Now, thank you once again for riding with me. I really do hope you enjoyed it, had a good time. Maybe learn a little bit about the history of the Comstock Lode and the Virginia Truckee Railroad. Folks,